Welcome to the No Shame Podcast. I'm John Groders. Once a year, filmmakers and producers, actors and directors from all over the world gather to be encouraged in the Lord and in their craft at the International Christian Visual Media Conference, or ICVM. We spent the week interviewing many of those who attended for our podcast.
Have no shame, no, we are not afraid, no shame.
Well, hi, this is John Groders. This is the No Shame Podcast, and we have a new guest with us, Chauncey Smith, and we're here at the ICVM convention, and it is just filled with amazing people that I am getting to meet, some of which we're getting to meet during the podcast. So we have spent not a lot of time together before this, but I was just briefly introduced to you, Chauncey, and you have this... the second longest running show on American television. And I said, what is it, Monday Night Football? And he said, no. Tell me about it.
I'll tell you, it's called Lifestyle Magazine. And we are the second longest continually running show under Meet the Press. We're 66 years young.
66.
Now, we started on WABC in New York. And we are still... randomly they still play our show Lifestyle. We're not on every single week, but because they kind of grandfathered us in, so to say that we're still on WABC, the number one market, is a real thank you, real blessing to God.
So you're saying if we could knock Meet the Press off the air, which should be our next strike, then you will be the number one longest running continuous show. So everyone call in and no.
Yeah, that's funny, John. Do it in a Christian way, though.
Do it in a nice Christian way. Take their knees out from under them.
But we have changed formats. Right after, we were Westbrook Hospital for years, and this is under the umbrella of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Okay.
And their show was called Westbrook Hospital, and then it was called Christian Lifestyle Magazine. And now we're just Lifestyle Magazine. It's funny, we had to drop the word Christian because, 15 so years ago, using that word puts you Sunday mornings and people wanted to charge you for airtime. But because of the show Lifestyle Magazine and some of the guests that we've had, from President Carter to Phyllis Diller to Debbie Reynolds, you name them, Buzz Aldrin, so many people have done our show. We're not a preaching stand-up show. We didn't need that. We didn't need to buy time on that Sunday morning, so we did drop the word Christian about 15 so years ago. We are still Christians, but we're a storyteller about mind, body, and soul.
Lifestyle Magazine on TV, 66 years young.
Yeah.
Chauncey, what do you do with this show?
I'm one of the producers of the show. I'm also one of the talent. We have a real small company at Faith for Today. When we're in production, which takes about... you need a drink there, John?
No.
Okay. There you go. When we're in production, we shoot about twice a year, but we shoot about 8 shows a day. That's how we can afford to do this. So it takes me about 4 to 6 months to find the guests, to find the celebrities, to find the topics, and then we shoot the shows. When we're not in production, I syndicate the show.
Okay.
So we just finished another season, and we're editing now. But some of the guests that we had was that we're just thrilled to get was the actress Jacqueline Smith from Charlie's Angels. She came to us, and Lonnie Anderson from
Lonnie
WK,
Anderson, oh my goodness.
and Debbie Boone from You Light Up My Life.
Debbie Boone.
Yeah, so we get a lot of people that'll come on and talk about whether it's diabetes or divorce or high blood pressure, our children, our adoption, or there's no topic that we haven't discussed on our show. And you can go to, we're on DirecTV, we're on Sky Angel, we're on Dish, all of it, Roku, all over the place, John.
We're talking with Chauncey Smith. This is the No Shame Podcast. I'm John Groders. We're at ICVM, and Chauncey is a producer, as we're all finding out, of this long-running lifestyle show called Lifestyle Magazine. Our little, motto is at the intersection of faith and culture. You've been doing that for 66 years, talking to people who are plugged in somehow to whatever culture is, but probing them about issues of all kinds of things, as you're just saying. How would you define what that means to find that crossroads between our culture and our faith?
Well, I'll tell you, John, for me personally, I've been there about 25, 27 years doing this with them. And it's always been my personal goal was to bring the Hollywood community into the church, and the church into the Hollywood community. And that's a very you have to do that very, very carefully. But it certainly can be done, especially now in the last 5-10 years. It's much more acceptable. But I wanted people to know that the Seventh-day Adventist church people are we're not just that cult that doesn't eat meat. We have a lot of talent in our church. And we really, for this show, we don't care really about making Adventists out of people, but we do want people just to see Jesus in our shows. And you'd be shocked, John. I mean, it happens to us almost every week. Somebody will write in and say, or they'll call and they'll say, I heard you say something about Jesus. We never said it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It just was never said. But somehow people say that. And we just won the Houston Film Fest. We placed a platinum and we placed gold. So we're out there doing our part. And but it's more human. We're not a preaching show. And so we're just so thankful and thank you for letting me be a part of this. I appreciate that very much. This is the first time I've been to this convention. And I wear a double hat now because last season I actually wrote a book about adoption and blended families. I'm adopted, and I found my biological mom. And both moms have written a chapter in this book. The girl that helped me find my family wrote a chapter on what to do and what not to do. The sisters have written a chapter in the book because there's a lot of unplanned pregnancies, but there's no unplanned adoption.
Right.
And so I'm learning now to do these more TV things to not only promote Lifestyle Magazine, but also to promote the book, So That's Who I Am. And you can get it on Amazon. For anybody out there that has questions about adoption or blended families. Sandy Patty wrote the foreword for me for the book. And I used to be on the soap opera General Hospital, and I had some people, and that has helped me being on that #1 soap opera. That has helped me get guests even today that will come on Lifestyle Mag. It's all kind of word of mouth. That show, General Hospital, when I was on it, it had Luke and Laura, but we also had Elizabeth Taylor, Sammy Davis Jr., Milton Berle, John Stamos, Demi Moore, Ricky Martin. I mean, everybody has done that show, Rick Springfield. And so I still work with some of those people. And it's just amazing to see what God can do. And sometimes the longer I'm in this business, the more I find people that have found the Lord.
Well, I'm interested in the adoption topic.
Sure.
What have you learned about adoption from being adopted yourself? I mean, it was even a big part of the Steve Jobs story.
Yes.
We all have read his book and seen
Yeah.
the multitude of movies, and his story was partially about adoption. What do you add to that conversation?
Well, I only can add me personally is we are different. We are different. We're not better. We're not worse. But the very first thing that we inherit is abandonment. I mean, no matter what, that's the very, if you can inherit eye color and you can inherit height and right hand, if you can inherit all that, then you certainly can inherit emotions. Well, the first thing is abandonment. Not being held by your own mother. My mom told me that she never looked at me and she never touched me. Of course, I didn't find this out till 30-some years later. But she says she knew she couldn't give me away if she had. The mom that raised me, it's not hard to go out there and get pregnant. We all know how to do that. What's hard is to raise a child for 40-plus years.
Yeah.
So mom, but like I said, mom is who raised me. That is my mom. But I have since met my biological mom.
You were a child for 40-plus years? That says a lot about you, Chauncey. I didn't know that. Give your mother a gold star.
Yeah. But, and also adoption, I think what people have to remember is it doesn't just affect you and the parent, it affects the brothers and sisters, the aunts and the uncles. And I mean, it's not just a one or two people thing. Adoption really does affect a lot of people. And what I try to encourage people to do with that is to not call, like I have 4 sisters. I found out later, when my friend found my mom, I have 4 sisters that I'm very close to now. I don't call them my half sisters.
Right.
I don't call them my stepsisters. I call them my sisters. My mom, who raised me, she now says she has 4 daughters in North Carolina. The sisters say they now have a California mom. So it's a beautiful story of that's who I am, but I was also rejected again by my father on that side. So I know what it's like to be rejected, accepted, and rejected. And if you want to put a religious spin on it, we're all adopted.
Absolutely.
You know, we're all adopted. But the older I get, I feel for watching people. I think I would never encourage a teenager to go out and find their biological parents, just personally, because it's a roller coaster ride. But there is closure and there is healing in it, because you don't fit in.
Wow. We went as a group every year at the ICVM convention, and this is your first time.
Yeah, my first time.
Last night we went out. We always do something, whether it's a baseball game or Disney World. The convention moves every year. This last night we went to Johnny Cash's house. Did you go on that trip?
I did not go last night. No.
Well, what you missed, Chauncey, was some music. There was a little stage, and we had several artists. Gary Chapman sang a bit. We listened to Johnny Cash's young nephew took the stage, and then his grandson.
Oh boy.
And you close your eyes, his voice was identical, and he sang "Walk the Line." And I mean, when you just said you can inherit emotion, I mean, I don't know nature, nurture. I'm not studied in that regard. Apparently, singing voice can be inherited, because how does Johnny Cash's grandson have the same deep, low, resonant voice?
Yeah.
I don't know that we understand when the Bible says the sins of the father will be carried to the fourth generation and the righteousness to the thousandth generation. So what are your thoughts about nature, which is your biological mother that you have inheritance from and father, and then nurture, which is the family that, like you said, for 40 years raised you out of childhood?
Right. Well, that's powerful, John, and thank you for sharing that with me. It's true. I'll tell you two quick stories. Growing up, I always wanted to smoke cigarettes. Nobody in my family smokes. None of my parents. I was raised in a Seventh-day Adventist home, and I mean, none of my just never did. But I always wanted to smoke. Well, of course, who do I explain? I didn't know why. Just a kid. But as a teenager will do, I took a puff off a cigarette and I was hooked. One puff and I was hooked. And I didn't hide it from my parents. It just broke their heart. But I was hooked. Well, come to find out, 30-some years later, when I met my biological mom, she smoked when she was pregnant with me, because they did back then.
Yep.
And 3 out of my sisters smoke.
Wow.
And so John, I wanted to smoke. It was in me. Another quick story, and it's in the book. Do you mind that I mention it again?
No, please do. That's why we're here.
So that's who I am on Amazon. My sister, who was adopted quite a few years after me, she was in foster care for a little bit before, and that could have had some issues. But to make a long story short, most of her growing up in early teens was afraid to go to sleep at night. She had nightmares a lot, and she would either sleep on the floor of my room or my parents' room. As she got a little older, she couldn't watch anything that had to do with rape. And she'd even say, I don't know why this word, but she was always afraid of the word rape. She'd talk about it and whatever. Well, after I found my family, I wanted my sister to experience the good in that, the healing, the closure, whatever. So we found her mother. And to make a long story short, her mother was raped and got pregnant with my sister. And so my sister inherited all that fear and all that. We would never know that.
How do the swans of Capistrano know to fly back to the same harbor every year? How do we understand these deep, deep things?
Yep.
And what does it mean for adoptive parents? Do you talk about that from that side of the book?
Of course,
again? So
yeah.
You're a couple. What do you?
They
what
wrote.
Do you say to them?
My mom, both moms wrote a chapter on what they went through and what they were going through. My mom always felt that part of my puzzle would be missing. She always my mom and dad wanted me to feel whole and complete. And I didn't think I needed to, John. The honest truth, I was happy. I really honestly did not feel that.
Right.
My friend was going through a divorce and needed something to do. And she says, do you mind if I said, go for it. I never thought this would happen. I never experienced it. But it wasn't until the mixture, then writing this book, that I really, really realized all the things I did shove down. I never used to believe it when people would say, oh, I just buried that. I used to think, well, how could people bury something?
Right.
But I truly, I didn't realize how important it was for me to know this story. But I only realized it once the story started coming forward. Because it is me.
Tell me the name of this book one more time.
So I would tell you 10. It's called So That's Who I Am.
So That's Who I Am.
And it's on Amazon.com, Chauncey Smith. So That's Who I Am.
If you're listening, the beautiful and amazing and mysterious thing about a podcast is that it will just find its way into nooks and crevices and
Awesome.
cars and headphones, and we don't know. Only God knows. So That's Who I Am, Amazon.com. If this topic interests you, if it's because maybe you were adopted, maybe you're considering adoption, maybe you have a friend who you think needs to go through this journey the way Chauncey Smith has been describing it on this. So That's Who I Am. Just find it. Just read it. We can't read the whole book on a podcast, but dive in deep. We are discovering there's more there than meets the eye.
And and thank you, John. And if somebody, I'm on Facebook, I'm Chauncey Smith. If you're listening to this and you wanna just Facebook me and say I heard this on the podcast, just tell me where you and I'll Facebook you back and we'll talk about it, because we're all in this together. And even blended families, blended families, it's not their choice.
Yeah.
When someone remarries and brings kids, it's not their choice. And blended families are awesome.
Well, I just want to join in applauding. My daughter and her husband have 3 foster kids from Africa that they're raising. We see the beauty, the joy, how beautiful these kids are, but our eyes are open. It's not all beautiful joy. Sometimes it's really difficult. But
what made them decide? I don't know how much longer we have, but what made them decide, John, to foster?
Love for Jesus.
Amen.
It's really just a matter of we want to bring these kids and give them a home. Home for the fatherless is their calling, and so they're taking in kids that nobody else wanted and loving them and trying to bring them home, both in their houses and in the Lord.
And have you met them, John?
Oh, of course, yeah, we see them all the time.
And how do you
I'm
feel?
Grandpa, absolutely.
See, isn't that awesome? Let's look down.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish this was a camera, because I have your grandpa.
Oh, absolutely.
To someone that these kids could never say.
Yeah.
That's awesome, John.
This is my Driven by Love is a movie that I'm putting together about her, that family, her music, and their farm. It's just a touching story.
Well, we need to stay in contact, because when we're back in production for Lifestyle Magazine,
Yes.
this would be a great story to come and talk about.
We would love to be on and play her music. And I think that the other thing that's kind of going without saying here is the alternative to this discussion is a word called abortion. And if people are going to stand up as strongly as I do, that says I don't think that that's God's plan, then we also need to stand up and say where there's need, where there's children, and we have to step up and take care of them and be the whole church in that conversation. And it sounds like you've got some important things to say about that in their book, and probably on your TV show too.
Well, we do, and I did do one episode of the show. We can't do a whole season on adoption.
Right.
But one of the things that was really powerful for me was Sandy Patty, the most awarded Christian artist out ever. They have 8 kids.
Oh, really?
She had 4. He had her second marriage. She had 3. Then they adopted a little African American boy's name is Sam. So she's very aware of both sides of that. And when she met my biological mom, she went up in tears and hugged her and said, "Thanks for choosing life."
Exactly. Thanks for choosing life. Yeah, thank you to your mom, who wasn't, I don't know the story, but apparently not in a position where she was able to raise you.
She was too young. My biological dad was a drinker, and he actually physically abused her when she was pregnant with me. So she left her home, came out. She didn't know a soul, but my aunt in Cal. She came out and had me, never looked at me, never touched me, and moved back to Ohio at that point. And then 37 years later, got a phone call.
Wow. You never know what a life is going to be spent doing. Chauncey Smith is our guest on No Shame Podcast. He's been a producer on the second longest running television show in America, trailing only that dastardly Meet the Press, which we are sure to knock off their prize pillar very time soon. Chauncey, it's great to meet you. Welcome to ICVM. I hope that this week is a blessing to you. It
already
is to me.
has, John, and I can't wait to talk to you more off mic about possibly having your family tell the story on Lifestyle Magazine. And thank you, John.
All right. This is the No Shame Podcast. I'm John Groders. Tune in again. These guests are awesome.
Have no shame. No, we are not afraid. No shame. On the gospel of His name. It's the power of God by which we all are saved. We need not be afraid. Show same.